Hey, it's Kenny from Broad Street. Let's talk about the internet average click-through rate. So at the end of a campaign, we're going back to an advertiser and we want to keep them on board because we worked hard to get them on board and we rely on repeat business. So if we're going back to them with a report to show them numbers, you might be wondering, are these good numbers? Should they be impressed by these? Should I be impressed by these? Or are they low? Should I be worried about it? Let's talk about the internet averages and what we see among local news publishers. The internet average click-through rate is a 0.05% click-through rate. That means about 1 out of every 2,000 people who see an ad click on it. That is a baseline. It's really low. It's an easy bar to cross. And some publishers actually have a little trouble doing that. But if you're doing things right, meaning getting your ads well positioned on the page and they're not running for too long, you should be able to hit that no problem. Across local news publishers, right? So newspapers, city and regional magazines, those types of publishers, you tend to see something more like a 0.1 or 0.15% as an average. Those are for standard banners that really aren't anything different than a 720 by 90 banner ad or a 300 by 250 banner ad in the sidebar. So if you're not running anything fancy on a local news site with a higher quality readership, you're probably going to see a 0.1 to 0.15% click-through rate. When it comes to higher impact units, one of the things that Broad Street really specializes in, so native ad units, anything with video, anything that just looks a little bit different, is higher impact, HTML5, something creative that you can really put in front of an advertiser. They tend to perform really well with users on local news websites too, and you tend to see more of a 0.25 to 0.75% click-through rate. So now we're getting to a place where maybe it's 1 out of every 500 people who see an ad click on it, getting closer to even maybe 1 out of every 250 people who see an ad click on it. So if you're running something higher impact, especially with video, especially if it blends in with the look and feel of the site, of course it has to be clearly labeled, it's going to get a higher click-through rate. It doesn't just scream banner ad. Now, if you run something like a billboard, so something like what you'll see at the top of sweetwaternow.com, it's like a big billboard, and you've probably seen them in other places too, those will get a 1% click-through rate. So really, really high click-through rates, and sometimes north of that. At Broad Street, we've run one of those to promote a webinar for a short period of time on lionpublishers.com. And for a webinar which got about 200 signups for this particular webinar, we got 50 to 60 of them through a billboard that we ran on one website for a few weeks. So they definitely work. They get a lot of impact and a lot of value for the advertiser. They also sell really well too. Any kind of short-term pop-up, and I say short-term because the shorter the length of the campaign, the higher the click-through rate is going to be. Typically, the longer a campaign runs, the more that click-through rate kind of declines over time. If you're running a pop-up for a client and you're doing it on a short-term basis, 1, 2 days, maybe a week, you might see a click-through rate of 1 to 2%. So it'll be really high. So those are the internet averages. At the baseline, if you're a local news publisher, you want to hit 0.1%. There are some hacks that you can use to get those click-through rates higher. We have another video on one of those. So those are the click-through rates that you want to try and achieve to keep that customer on board and happy.